Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's your girl, the Brook Ashley, and today we are here to discuss the Real Housewives of Atlanta, Season 14, Episode 7. And before we begin, another A+ episode, but I have to say, Marlo and Sanya are getting on my last good nerve. Both of them irritated me to no end. I'm not understanding why Sanya is so angry at Drew. It feels like misplaced anger, and I'm trying to get a storyline together. But let me not jump ahead. Let's just get right on into this recap because I have quite a lot to say, and we don't have a minute to spare. So this episode starts off right where we left off last week, with everybody at the cooking class, and Drew arrives. So Sanya's greeting her. It's kind of awkward, but Drew says that she wanted to show up because she is a very supportive friend. So of course, they're all finished cooking and it's time for them to eat. When I tell you that food looked amazing, and you already know what I'm gonna say, yes, my mouth was watering. And a lot of you guys always say, Brooke, when is your mouth not watering? When it comes to some food being shown, I'ma talk about it. So remember in last week's episode when they first arrived at the cooking class, Sonya made them all dance. So she says the person who did the best duddy wine gets to wear her gold medal. So she brings out her gold medal and Marlo wins the contest. Now I have to say, Marlo did a great job, and I didn't know that Marlo could dance. Now, I was screaming because Drew was not here for it at all. She was like, really, Sanya? You don't see Kenya walking around with her Miss USA crown. You don't see Kandi going around showing everybody her Grammys. Like, you traveling with your Olympic gold medal is giving very much pick me and a try hard. Now, I said, Drew, let me stop you right there because you're also a try hard and very much a pick me. So I said, not too much, girl, not too much. So now here's where things go left. Sonya brings up how she's happy that Drew showed up because she's been wanting to talk to her for quite some time now. Now, in my opinion, I wouldn't have brought that up in front of the group. I would have said, everybody, thank you for coming. How's everybody doing? And had some small talk. But I guess that sounds too much like right. And the nature of this show, whenever they get together, especially during a group dinner scene, it always has to be some drama. So now Drew says, well, funny that you mentioned that because when we were in New York, I was confused too. Because when you were getting your makeup done by my artist for free, and so Sonya stops her right there and she's like, excuse me, what? Like, you never gave me the invoice. Like, I didn't know. Like, how much is it, Drew? And she's really pissed that Drew is low-key shading her that she ran out on the makeup artist. Now, when they were arguing about this, I remembered, I think it was last season of Married to Medicine, where I think Toya got into it with her friend Neela about Neela not paying the makeup artist, and I immediately thought about that. But anyhow, Drew and Sonya are going back and forth, and Sonya says, girl, how much was it? $25? Like, girl, I'll give you double for your trouble. You're not about to say that I ran out on the bill. And now Sonya's getting loud. She's screaming. And I was just thinking, Sonya, you didn't have to start screaming. I didn't think that it called for all that. And again, I just feel like this conversation did not need to be had in front of the group. You have your mom there. Mama Joyce is there as well. Like, why are you guys going nuts over this? So now Sonya starts throwing shade about Drew's business, dropping it with Drew, and she goes on to say how things aren't adding up, it makes no sense, and how Drew needs to be honest. So now Drew says, the fact that we're even having this conversation in front of everybody is very hurtful, and then you inviting me and then uninviting me to your Mommy Nation photo shoot, that was very hurtful. So now Sonya says that she's very sensitive in the way that she communicates. And I said, well, that doesn't make much sense, sis, because you're sitting up here screaming and yelling at somebody, so you're really not that sensitive. I think that the way Sonya communicates is off. And for all the people who can't stand Drew, I'm not a Drew fan either, but I'm gonna be fair. In this situation, Sonya is reaching. Nobody can give me a concrete answer as to why Sonya is this mad at Drew. It makes no sense. And for people bringing up how thirsty Drew was and how, you know, Drew was picking out LaToya last season, while that might be so, that doesn't negate what Sanya is doing to Drew now. So here's where I really got annoyed. Sanya's going on and on and on. And while Drew is listening, Drew is making some faces. Now, let's be real. If you have somebody yelling at you and you're just sitting there quiet, you're going to be pissed off. I know for me, my facial expressions show everything that I'm feeling. Like, I can't hide my facial expressions. And if we're in an argument, I will be making faces. And you're not going to stop me. You know, like, I really don't know what to tell you. So I was really annoyed when Sanya's mom jumped in. Like, first of all, I'm all for riding for your kid. That's great. That's a beautiful thing. But if I were her mom, I would have said, Sanya, let's not have this conversation here. Like, you know, it's a nice outing. Like, just stop it. My mom would have probably told me, Brooke, stop. Like, don't make this night worse. Just have a good time. Stop it. I did not like how Sanya's mom jumped in trying to chastise Drew. I thought she was out of line for that. I don't know if I'm the only one who felt that way, but I was like, really? Your daughter is the one being nasty and yelling and raising her voice and getting all hype, but now you want to come at me because I'm making a few faces? Like, what? How does that work? So now things get worse because Drew says that she feels like Sanya is clout chasing. So now Sanya gets all turned up. She's slamming the table, talking about clout chasing off of you. Excuse me, I'm a 4-time Olympic gold medalist. Like, don't you ever say I'm clout chasing off of anybody. Now, again, a lot of you guys have said, well, why did Sanya need to reach? Because she was already famous. Yeah, but if we're being real, I wasn't checking for Sanya. I had forgotten all about her until she got on this show. Just because somebody has accomplished a lot, they can still be a clout chaser. And before anybody starts, I think that Drew is a big-time clout chaser as well. And when Drew said, we should have resolved this issue one-on-one, just us two. And I agree. There was no reason for this conversation to go left the way it did and for this to be a group conversation. And that's always very annoying to me when an argument that shouldn't really have been a big argument gets blown up even worse. And it's like, this should have been maybe a 30-minute discussion. You guys hash out how you feel, then you hug it out. But for you guys just to be at each other's throats, Sanya's screaming, like it shouldn't have gotten this far. And I'm still confused as to what the real issue with Drew is. So now Sanya and Drew stop arguing, and now Drew decides to be messy, and she brings up Kenya's gripes with Kandi and the sex toys when they were in New York. I was screaming because Drew said, look, if my night's going to be ruined, then someone else's night's going to be ruined too, okay? I'm not going to be the only one sitting up here arguing. So Kandi's already upset, and she says, what? You talked to Drew about this and not me? So Kenya says, look, Kandi, I felt very uncomfortable by the whole thing. I thought it was very inappropriate, like I wasn't feeling it at all. The fact that other people's husbands were able to zap up the panties, like I didn't like that. And you already know that while this conversation is going on, Mama Joyce has to interject because God forbid somebody say anything to Kandi. So Mama Joyce says, well, Kenya, if you didn't want to put the panties on, then, you know, nobody could force you. Like, nobody could force me to do anything. I control my vagina. So Kenya's laughing. She's like, okay, Mama Joyce, you know, like, that's right. You know, you got it. And then she reiterates how she felt very uncomfortable. So now Kandi at this point is really pissed. And she says, not the woman who starred in Twa being prim and proper and acting like, you know, she just can't deal with some vibrating panties. Now, a quick side note, I remember that movie that Kenya was in. It was her and Gary Dourdan, and they played a married couple. I had no business watching that movie, but it was always on BET, and I was, like, little. But I remember that, like, he wanted to open up their marriage or have a threesome. He, like, kept bugging her to have one, and then she finally gives in, and then the woman is crazy. Just a mess, but I couldn't stop laughing. I was like, oh, my gosh, I forgot that Kenya was in that movie. Now, Kandi, the same way you get upset when you feel like people are slut-shaming you or bringing up your sexual past and what you do and don't do in the bedroom in your face, why did you feel the need to throw the fact that Kenya starred in that movie years ago in her face? Like, what was that for? She's expressing that she was uncomfortable by it. She didn't like how other people's husbands could, control the panties. And also, the trip wasn't about sex. It was about supporting you in your play. And then when Kandi went on to say in her confessional, Kenya has all these wild sex stories and all this stuff. I don't know why she's acting like that. And it's like, again, what does that have to do with anything? And I really hit the floor when Marlo had the gall to fix her mouth and say, Kenya acting like that when she slept with half of Hollywood. And when the producer asked her, well, can you name some names? And she said, well, just Google her. Google her when she was in her prime and a whole bunch of names will pop up. All the rumors surrounding you, Marlo? I said, you really want to do this? And you're the last person who needs to be slut-shaming anybody. And can somebody let me know down in the comments, is this a known fact about Kenya? Because I have never heard these rumors until now. I don't remember hearing anything about Kenya sleeping with all these people. I just don't remember hearing that. I remember watching an interview that she did some years ago when Cynthia and Nene were still in the cast, and she was saying that she's actually a prude and how she makes men wait a year to have sex and all this stuff. So hearing them all say, well, she slept with half of Hollywood and this and that, it's like, well, I don't know. And even if that was the case, why is that any of your business? She can do whatever she wants. And Marlo, you sound jealous. Are you mad that Kenya might have dated one of your Hollywood crushes? Is that what it is? Because I'm not understanding why you feel the need to constantly slut-shame her. So Kenya and Kandi are going back and forth. Kandi's raising her voice, and she's like, it was a joke. It was a joke. Relax, calm down. It was just a fun joke. And I'm thinking, now, I am nobody's prude, but there have to be better jokes than everything being sex-related. But now we jump to the next scene, and we see Marlo. She has been invited to the Women's Expo in Atlanta, and she's going to be one of the keynote speakers. So we see Marlo on stage, and she's talking about her life, and we learn that from a young age, she was in foster care, and because of what she went through early on, Marlo has her foundation called Glam It Up Girls, and she wants to help other girls who are in the foster care system. And she's going on about how she's gotten sponsorships from Neiman Marcus, Sugar Factory, Tyler Perry, and how, she just wants to give them a really great experience and to remind them that they're worthy and they're not alone because she's been through it too. Now, let me just say this. When Marlo's discussing her upbringing, when she's very vulnerable, sharing her story, she's actually very likable. If Marlo could just tap into this side of herself more often, she would be very enjoyable. But the very nasty side of her, the very shallow side of her, I can't stand it. So we see Marlo finishing up at the Women's Expo, and now she's outside FaceTiming Drew. So of course they're discussing the cooking class and how things went left. Marlo goes on to say that she just couldn't believe that Kenya showed up since Kenya wasn't there to support Sheree. And I'm like, Marlo, how long are you going to harp on the fact that Kenya didn't show up? I don't understand why you're just so upset that Kenya was sick and didn't want to get you guys sick. Marlo gets fixated on the weirdest stuff because some stuff really isn't a big deal. It wasn't like Kenya didn't show up because she just didn't feel like it. And on top of that, she asked Drew to come over to bring you all this stuff. So again, I'm just not understanding why you're so pressed about it. And it's really weird that you assume the worst about your friend. If you love Kenya so much, then you shouldn't be this angry at the fact that she couldn't show up because she was sick. So now, out of nowhere, Marlo brings up Kandi and how Kandi wasn't supportive of Sheree. So she's like, you know what? I'm going to give Kandi a piece of my mind. Kandi's full of it. I can't stand her. She's just selfish. Who does that? I was thinking, why are you this mad at Kandi? What has Kandi done to you? Why Marlo's acting like Sheree is just this helpless victim when Sheree is a grown-ass woman in her 50s is beyond me. Sheree set her own self up for failure, falling in love with a man in jail in the first place. Let's start there. So now we jump to the next scene and we see Sheree at Chateau Sheree and her life coach, Jack Daniels.
You know what? This is too much.
I said, you really can't make this up. The fact that her life coach is named after whiskey. Oh, and one more thing. How much is Sheree paying this life coach? We know that Sheree does not like to pay people. So I was just thinking, I really wonder if he's getting his money or if she's paying him in free exposure. So her life coach, Jack Daniels, is asking her how she's doing. She says that she's been better, and then she takes a long sigh and she starts talking about the whole Tyrone mess. And can we talk about how shady production is for just 1 minute? I couldn't stop yelling because while Sheree is telling the story of what happened, you have a busy dial tone going off in the background. I couldn't stop laughing. I said, way to bring it on home, and how Sheree could not get in touch with Tyrone. Now, Jack says, look, Sheree, let me break this down for you. A woman like you and a man like him in prison, he's in a box every single night with only you to focus on. So he's jacking off to you every night. And the way Sheree's face was so disgusted when he said that, I was screaming. So now Jack goes on to say that Tyrone saw Sheree as a fantasy, and then once the fantasy was becoming real, because, you know, he's free now, and she actually wants to meet up and see him, he couldn't handle it. So now Sheree goes on to say that she feels stupid and naive, and she just feels like she's been duped because Tyrone was promising her the world. He was telling her that once he got out of jail, they would have this fantastic life together. I just refuse to believe that Sheree could be this foolish at her big age. I mean, Sheree, you were 47, 48 when you were talking to Tyrone. Now you're 52, 53. And the fact that you really believed what a man in prison was telling you. And one of y'all had me screaming in the comments a few weeks ago because you said the pickings must be slim. And I wrote back to you saying the pickings will never be that slim for me where I'm resorting to talking to a man in jail.
No.
I truly hope for Sheree's sake that she really takes a step back and works on her self-esteem. Because it's clear that her self-esteem is not as high as she wants to pretend that it is. Because if it was high, she would have never looked Tyrone's way in the first place. So now Jack wants to know if Sheree is done with Tyrone for good, and she says that she can't guarantee that she won't ever speak to him again. I was just like, you know what? Obviously, Sheree is a glutton for punishment. If she wants to be embarrassed like this, then who are any of us to stop her? And I know some people think that Sheree's only doing this for a storyline, but I don't think so. I think Sheree really means this. I think Sheree really is in love with this man, and she actually would give him a 60th, 70th, 80th chance to play in her face. Between Sheree's ex, Bob, Dr. Tai from season 3, remember how Nene had outed him for being a fake love doctor or whatever? That was a mess. And now Tyrone, a man in jail. I said Sheree is really batting 1,000 when it comes to her choice in men. So now Jack offers some advice, and he says, look, Sheree, take a step back from pouring into everybody else and pour into yourself. What's one aspect in your life that you want to work on? And she says her business, She by Sheree. So she goes on to say that she stopped and started all these years. So we see the montage play of Sheree launching She by Sheree in 2008 and how it's been a big bust 14 years later. And when Sheree was saying in her confessional how she actually produced yoga mats and accessories and shirts and hoodies and all this stuff, but she can't seem to find a team and a business manager. And I said, sis, it's not that you can't find a team, you don't have money for a team. So Jack says, that's great, Sheree. Focus on revamping your business and promise me no more men in jail. Let's find you a man who's free. So now we jump to the next scene with Kandi and Todd at home, and they're going through some old clothes, and Kandi says that she wants to donate some of these clothes to Marlo's charity. So now Kandi FaceTimes Marlo, and she tells Marlo that she has some clothes that she would like to donate to Marlo's foundation, and there's a pause on the phone, and Marlo is upset. She says, really, Kandi? Like, I would never give my girls hand-me-downs. Like, I wore hand-me-downs growing up, and I'm not giving my girls any of that, okay? Like, they deserve the best. Then Marlo goes on to say in her confessional that she's really hurt that Kandi would even offer that because she wouldn't bring an open bag of chips to one of Kandi's charities. So now they get off the phone and Kandi is visibly pissed that Marlo would even try to play her like that. So she's like, why would Marlo try to act like I'm giving some messed up clothes? These are gently used clothes that I've probably only worn once. I was on Kandi's side because I'm doing something nice for you out of the goodness of my heart, and you know me, you know my character. I wouldn't send you some torn clothes. These are clothes that are gently worn, only been worn maybe one time, in excellent condition. Nobody would even know that they're used. So I definitely understood why Kandi was pissed, because I would have been mad too. Like, here I am doing something nice, and now you want to snap at me and act like what I'm doing isn't good enough? And I'd like to believe that Kandi would also buy some new clothes as well, in addition to the gently worn clothes that she was going to give. I just think that Marlo, since she carries a lot of trauma from her past, she projects. And if I were Kandi, I would have said, Marlo, you know what? F you. I'm not donating anything. You know, go screw yourself. Because for you to pretty much spit in my face after I've offered to do something nice, I'm going to be pissed. And I think that Kandi was right to be upset. And somebody made a great point when they brought up Marlo's business archive. If you think about it, you're paying to rent a gently worn item, right? Because these were all pieces that Marlo wore. So the fact that Marlo's just so angry at Kandi wanting to donate these gently worn clothes is very comical. Now we jump to the next scene with Kenya and Sheree. They're meeting up for lunch, and they were at this really cool omelet place. Sheree's omelet looked really good. Kenya's looked good too. Now, I'm not even a breakfast girl like that. I don't care too much for omelets and all that, but it did look delicious, I have to say. You're probably shocked that I'm not a breakfast girl because the way that I talk about every food. But yeah, if I had to choose, lunch and dinner all the way. Like, I love a good cheeseburger, pasta, steak. I love some Thai food, Chinese food, Indian food, all that. Breakfast food, I could take or leave it. I guess my top 3 for breakfast would be bagels. I like some home fries, fresh fruit, some lox, and that's about it. But yeah, when it comes to breakfast, I'm not huge on it. I'd rather actually have dinner food for breakfast. But let me not go off on a tangent, okay? So anyhow, they sit down to catch up, and Kenya brings up all the drama in her business. We all know that Kenya has her successful Kenya Moore hair care line, and we learn that she missed a few of the deadlines with one of her retailers, which is Walmart. So now we learn that Kenya doesn't have a team of people to help her, and now she's in jeopardy of losing everything, and that's why she's freaking out. Now, hearing all of this, Kenya was surprisingly calm, because I would be freaking out. I would not be going to any function or event because I would be nervous as hell that my business might tank because of this. So Sheree says that she understands what Kenya's going through because she's had the same issues with She by Sheree. I said, Sheree, one thing you've always been consistent in is being delusional. Because the fact that you would even twist your mouth to compare a defunct brand that has never been able to get off the ground to a brand that's in Walmart, Sally's, and various other stores is a joke. You know that saying, you can't compete where you don't compare? That's exactly how Sheree sounded trying to compare She by Sheree to Kenya Moore hair care. So now Sheree's going on about how she's always trying to get a team together, but because there's a lot of men in the industry, every time she's this close to launching something, it goes south because these men in the industry want to sleep with her. So Kenya's giving Sheree advice. She says that Sheree needs to not settle and set boundaries. So now Kenya starts coughing, and then Sheree's like, girl, are you still sick? Kenya says, yes, I am. And now Kenya brings up Marlo accusing her of lying. And I was here for that read that Miss Kenya said, because she was like, just because I look better sick than Marlo does on her best day, doesn't mean that I'm lying. I said, I know that's right. So now Kenya goes on to say that one day Marlo's laughing in her face, the next day she's talking about her, saying that she's lying. And she says, I don't need that energy. Like, it's too toxic. And I feel like Marlo's a double agent. And then you have Sheree sitting there saying, yeah, like in agreement. And I'm like, Kenya, you need to watch your back for Sheree too. Sheree's a double agent as well. Sheree is very two-faced. She was just laughing at you with Marlo last episode. Talk about facts, preach, when Marlo was calling you all sorts of hoes and whores and washed up and this and that. So you need to watch out for Sheree too. And when Kenya said, look, I'm a loyal friend. I always want to support you, but I was just sick. And when Sheree was like, thank you so much for clarifying, I believe you. I was thinking, why do you need Kenya to prove to you that she was sick? Why can't you just take her word for it? If that's your friend, why would you assume that she's lying? If I say I'm sick and not feeling well, I'm sick and not feeling well. I'm not going to sit up here and jump through hoops to prove to you that I'm not lying. Like, what are you talking about? And Sheree, it shows how weak-minded you are at the fact that you would even take Marlo's side for a few seconds over Kenya. So they're finished with their meals, and then Kenya gets the bill. So she says, Sheree, it's my treat. And when Sheree said, oh, if I had known it was your treat, I would have asked to go to a 5-star restaurant, not this. I'm like, why can't you ever say thank you? Sheree is just always so ungrateful and drives me nuts. She's never thankful for anything that anybody ever does for her. She was ungrateful about the car service that Marlo sent for her in last week's episode. Talking about, well, you know, it's a car. I mean, I wish it was a Rolls Royce, but I guess it'll do. It's like, what's wrong with you? Kenya did not have to treat you. Also, when have we ever seen Sheree treat anybody to anything? I'll wait. So now we get to the next scene, and they're having a group lunch in honor of Sheree, since Kenya wasn't able to join Sheree and Marlo at Sheree's little cheer up party at Marlo's house. So anyhow, we see that Kenya has booked a nice rooftop for all of them, and Drew and Sanya arrive first. So it's a bit awkward between them, but they say that they're okay and they're good. So now Marlo arrives next. I have to admit, I did like that all red outfit she had on. It was very pretty. So Marlo tells Drew and Sanya that she's super emotional and super stressed out. And we learn that Marlo's sister, who's incarcerated, she went to court and her attorney asked if she could be released. The judge denied the request. And we also learn that her sister's in jail for a minor traffic violation. So now on top of all this, we also learned that the judge said that her sister could be released on one condition, if she would attend inpatient treatment. But her sister turned it down, and now it's going to go to trial. So because it's going to trial, she could be in jail for up to another year. So now Kenya and Sheree arrive, and Marlo, of course, can't help herself. She makes a snarky comment to Kenya saying, oh, Kenya, are you still sick? Because you look really good. So Kenya says, yeah, girl, I'm still sick. Like, it's enough already. Now, mind you, everybody's here for this lunch except for Kandi, because she's in LA filming her new show. And then we see a clip of her on set. I'm wondering what network this show is going to be on, because it seems very sexual. And what she was saying, I was like, okay, this has to be a show for either HBO, Stars, or Showtime. Like, this definitely can't be a show for just, cable TV. So we see them all toasting to Kandi not being there. And of course, since Kandi's name has been brought up, Marlo brings up her disappointment in Kandi wanting to donate gently worn clothes to her foundation. So as Marlo's going on and on, expressing her disdain for Kandi and these worn clothes, Kenya interrupts and she's like, Marlo, are you serious right now? Like, you can't catch an attitude as somebody who wanted to help. So now Marlo claps back and says, look, I wore hand-me-downs growing up. I hated it. I was picked on every day. I'm not doing that to my girls. Like, they deserve better. So now Kenya gets upset and says, well, girl, join the club, because I wore hand-me-downs too, and who didn't get picked on? Then Kenya goes on to say that Marlo puts way too much worth in clothes, and it's sending a bad message. Now, this has always been one of my top complaints about Marlo. Let me first say this. I love designer. I enjoy a good designer piece. It's nice to have. I can be a bit materialistic myself. I own it. But with all that being said, I try to remind myself daily that at the end of the day, these are just things. They don't determine my worth. We can't take any of this with us when we go. And again, these are just things. They're just material items. It's not that deep. Marlo puts way too much stock into designer pieces. And it's a sad way to be because think about it. God forbid you were to lose all your stuff. Would you now crumble and die and be a shell of yourself because you no longer have these pieces? It's clear that her worth comes from having labels. And again, I'm not going to act like I'm this perfect person who doesn't get caught up because I sometimes do. But I always remind myself at the end of the day, this is just stuff. But what Kenya said to her was right on the money. Like, sis, you're sending the wrong message to your girls. And like I said earlier, Marlo, you know good and well that Kandi would not send you some torn clothing that was in bad condition. It was gently worn stuff, probably only worn once, like Kandi said, in excellent condition. So for you to be angry and snap and say, you know, I can't believe she would do that. Like, who does that? That's disrespectful. Like, you need to get a grip. Marlo's one of those people where you don't want to do anything nice for her. She takes the fun out of everything. She gets so nasty with people. She snaps at the drop of a dime. Like, who wants to deal with that? Kenya goes on to say that Marlo acts like she's this good friend to you when she's really not. So Kenya says, look, Marlo, what you're doing is not landing over here. So now Marlo says, oh, really? Well, your wig's not landing. And I was thinking, Marlo, at the end of the day, you already know that Kenya has a beautiful head of hair. So she does wear a wig every now and again. It's not the end of the world. And Marlo trying to say that Kenya had a Mary Kay wig on. And I said, okay, girl. But had Kenya cracked on you about you not having any edges, you would have been crying about that. So again, not too much. So now Marlo and Kenya finally stop arguing. And then Marlo says that at the end of the day, she still loves Kenya and they're still friends. And I'm sorry, Marlo, if that's your definition of friendship, I want no parts of it. So now Marlo brings up Kandi again, and she says that at the end of the day, she wants more from Kandi. So now Sheree jumps in and says that Kandi should have been there for her and how she's known Kandi for a decade and all this stuff. And I was thinking, Sheree, when have you ever been there for Kandi? So since they're on the topic of friendship, Sonya interjects and she apologizes for the whole Mommy Nation photo shoot and not inviting everybody because she wasn't trying to hurt anybody's feelings. So Sonya says that she wants to make it up to Marlo and Sheree, and she invites them to Portland for her work trip because she's partnered with Nike. So they're like, oh my gosh, sure, we'd love to go. So Drew is watching this like, wait, what? Like, you originally invited me on that trip. Am I still invited? So Sonya's brushing Drew off, and then she says that they still have unresolved issues. And I said, but Sonya, you just said a few minutes ago when you first saw Drew that you guys were good. So which one is it? Are you guys friends or are you guys not? So Drew is still confused, like, wait, am I invited on this trip, yes or no? And now Sonya's like, Drew, you're driving me crazy right now. And she starts yelling. So she's hollering about the whole makeup artist debacle and how Drew was trying to embarrass her by saying that she didn't pay. And I'm thinking, Sonya, you really are reaching for everything. How would you expect Drew to feel? You uninvited her from the photo shoot. Now to add insult to injury, you're inviting Marlo and Sheree on this work trip to Portland when you originally invited her. So it's getting really heated. Sonya's yelling, Drew's calling Sonya unstable, and now Kenya starts pulling Drew's chair back because she doesn't want Sonya to hit her. And then you have Sheree trying to calm Sonya down because she doesn't want a fight to break out. So now Sonya keeps calling Drew whack. So Drew says, you know what, girl, I'm out. Shout out to everybody, I have fun.
Oh! Shout out to everybody, I had fun. I gotta be good.
She leaves the lunch. Kenya follows behind after her. And Kenya's like, Drew, you weren't listening that well. You kept cutting her off. So now Drew's like, I wasn't cutting her off. I was listening, but it just seems like she wants to fight, so I'm done. And then Kenya says, I'm sorry things went left like that, but I still have hope that you guys can work it out and get back together. And so Drew's like, maybe someday, but not today. And then she leaves. Now, it seems like Drew and Sonya are on great terms now, because Drew was at Sonya's birthday party a few days ago, and they were all hugged up in the pictures, and they're smiling, so it's safe to say they're all good. So we end this episode with Marlo's nephews meeting her at the restaurant, and they're getting ready to call their mom, which is Marlo's sister, up to convince her to go and get treatment so that she can be out of jail and the boys can see her. So we see Marlo and her nephews FaceTime their mom, which is Marlo's sister, and we find out that the call went terribly. Marlo's sister was cursing at her on the call, and then she picked up a chair and threw it at the monitor. Marlo is devastated, and then we see her crying and hugging her nephews, and that's where the episode ends. My heart broke for Marlo and her nephews. I can only imagine how her nephews felt. And I just hope and pray that Marlo's sister will get the help that she needs soon. And thank God that her nephews do have Marlo, because I can only imagine how they feel. But y'all, another fantastic episode. Atlanta is really giving what the girls said they were supposed to have gave in the words of Rolling Ray, and I am here for it. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching my recap. I hope you all enjoyed. And you guys already know what to do. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you all later. Bye.